Greetings from Mesa United Methodist Church of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We hope this message will be meaningful and relevant to your life and your relationship with God. We are located at the corner of Taylor Ranch and Montana Road, and we invite you to join us for worship every Sunday. Our traditional service is at 8:30 a.m., and our contemporary worship is at 11 a.m. More information may be found at our website, mesaviewumc.com. To honor all copyright restrictions, we have removed some audio and video footage from this message. Now may you be blessed through the reading and hearing of God's holy word.
The scripture reading tonight is from Matthew, the 2nd chapter, verses 1 through 12. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out. And there, ahead of them, went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road.
I was camping in northern New Mexico one year, and when I say camping, it wasn't driving up to the camping spot. It was putting on a pack and walking 20 miles out into the woods. And so we were in the middle of nowhere, no artificial lighting around us, and it was August at the time of the Perseid meteor shower, which is one of the best meteor showers of the year. And so we decided to stay up late, and we walked into an open meadow away from our campfire. And the meteors, normally they just zoom across the sky a couple of seconds. This, you could count 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seconds as they zoomed across the atmosphere, burning up on their way. Until going to see the total solar eclipse this year was by far the most amazing astronomical event that I had ever seen. And it's something we're normally separated from because of all the ambient light, the light pollution. It just surrounds us every single night. That there are people who have never seen the Milky Way splayed out across the night sky. There are people who have never seen thousands of stars. Some people never even seen hundreds of stars in the night sky because the light is always blocking our way. There was a commercial for a truck that came out this fall. Some of you may have seen it. A father gives his daughter a telescope, and she's out in the backyard, and he sort of realizes she can't really see anything with all the light that's surrounding them, so they get into his brand new truck and drive into the middle of nowhere so she can look at stars. And of course, then he leaves on his headlights and the doors to the truck, so the interior lights are on, and the truck, on the light on the bed of the truck is also on, which sort of defeats the entire purpose of going in the middle of nowhere. But you could clearly see how nice of a truck this was, although I can't remember what the brand was, so it wasn't as effective. I think they really wanted it to be. But we are sort of separated from what takes place in the night sky. It wasn't always this way. We don't have to go back very far to find a time in which there was not perpetual light around us, when people paid attention to what was happening in the nighttime sky. And sometimes their lives or their livelihood depended upon what the night sky might show them, and they certainly couldn't sort of just wake up in the morning and ask Google or Siri, what's the weather going to be like today? They depended upon what they saw in the sky. The 19th Psalm begins The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all their earth, their words to the ends of the world. That even though they didn't actually speak to us, they said important things. And so I think that Calvin is right. That's not John Calvin, but of Calvin and Hobbes. That if we spent more time looking at the stars, of seeing the splendor and wonder of creation, that we might live differently. Or at least we might approach how we live differently. For the past few years on Christmas Eve, I've been walking through the main characters that we encounter for the birth of Jesus, of Mary and Joseph and the angels and the shepherds, and what we can learn from them to apply to our own faith lives. And after encountering all of them, I thought I was sort of done. I was going to move on to something else this Christmas. But throughout the fall, things kept bringing me back to the star. Things that I would read or things that people would say, and that was before I even knew that there was a cartoon coming out entitled The Star. And if before you ask, I didn't see it, I can't tell you whether you should go see it or not. But that was sort of the clinching moment for me that I need to be focusing on something else. Now, I was not going to originally talk about either the wise men or the star as part of the nativity story because they're not really part of it. Even though we have them in our nativity sets, the wise men come much later than do the shepherds, and the wise men are never in the same place at the same time. They're really not even a part of Jesus' birth. Luke and Matthew, the only two Gospels that record anything about Jesus' birth, tell us very different stories. In Luke's account, the one with which most of us are familiar, Mary and Joseph have to travel to Bethlehem. They live in Nazareth. They travel to Bethlehem because of this census that's being taken, and she has the baby there. They can't find a place for them to stay, and so she has to give birth, and she lays him in a manger, and then there's angels running around the countryside proclaiming the good news to shepherds who are out abiding in their fields. But in Matthew, Mary and Joseph don't have to find a place to stay in Bethlehem because they live in Bethlehem, which is why the wise men find them in a house. And additionally, they don't show up immediately at the birth. It could be as long as 2 years after Jesus' birth that Matthew says they arrive, because Herod orders the killing of all male children who are 2 years or younger in the city of Bethlehem. And so it's been maybe quite a while since the birth of Jesus when the wise men originally show up. Now, in Hispanic cultures, the arrival of the wise men is celebrated on Three Kings Day. That is the biggest celebration. Christmas is sort of an afterthought because that's the day on which you exchange the gifts. We recognize that day as Epiphany, January 6th. The epiphany of God being made known to non-Jews, to Gentiles, to these foreigners who come to also participate in the good news. And so we could say a lot about these foreign men. They're not kings, even though we just sang that. They're magi, which can be translated in a multiplicity of ways. We don't know how many there were. There's 3 gifts, but there could have been 3 of them, or 10 of them, or 2 of them. We simply don't know how many there actually are. But I want to focus on the star and of people's reaction to it. Now, there's lots of speculation about what the Star of Bethlehem may have been. Some have said that it was convergence of planets, and so there was an unusually bright object in the sky. There's not really good convincing evidence for that. Others have speculated that maybe it was a comet that was bright in the night sky, but comets tended to be omens of bad things that were going to happen, so more than likely not would have something that the Magi would have followed to see what was taking place. Some have speculated perhaps it was a supernova. That is, that a star had exploded and it was visible at the time. I'm not sure whether that's true, but it's a beautiful metaphor, I think, for the Christmas story. Because long after supernovas, the light that we can see has gone away, we can still detect it through the infrared light, through X-rays and radio waves. And so we can see the supernova even though we can't see it with our eyes anymore. And so as we think about the impact that Christ has had on the world, I think seeing that as a supernova has sort of a nice aspect as we think of the Christmas story. But it's probably not likely either. What we do know is that people did look to the sky for omens, both good omens and bad omens. And they looked for some celestial guidance when a new king was born, something to indicate that something significant had taken place. And so these magi, these wise men from Babylon or Persia, modern-day Iraq, see something in the sky that brings them to Palestine. Although there's no specific prophecy in the Hebrew Scriptures about a star presaging the coming of the Messiah. There is a mention in the book of Numbers that a star shall come out of Jacob and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. But if you read that oracle in context in the book of Numbers, it's referring to what's happening at the immediate time, not something that happens hundreds of years later. Although the prophecy about the Messiah coming from Bethlehem is much clearer in the prophet Micah, which is what the scribes and chief priests say to Herod when he asks, where will the Messiah be born? But to me, all the arguments about the astronomical phenomenon that might have been the Star of Bethlehem overlook what Matthew is actually saying to us, and I think miss the point entirely. Because first, Matthew is telling a theological story here about the importance of Christ and God's control of the universe. And second, what Matthew describes doesn't match any normal phenomenon that we know of, because the star sort of moves from west to east rather than east to west because of the rotation of the earth, which is how we normally see things, and then it moves southward. And additionally, we're told that the star stopped over a place where the child was. So that means this star not only identified a country and a city, but a particular house. Now, I've never seen a star where I could say, oh, it's that house that it's hanging over. And I'm guessing that none of you have ever seen that either. This led some medieval theologians to say it's not a star at all. It was actually an angel that guided the wise men to Bethlehem. But I think our emphasis on this star should focus on two things. The first is the power of this star to cause wonder in people. And the second is to lead them to action. Now, has anyone here ever been in total darkness? And I'm not talking about going into the garage and having the door closed behind you darkness, but darkness where you put your hand in front of your face and you can't see it. Where was it, Judy?
It was in a cave.
In a cave. Anybody who's been in total darkness outside of a cave? That was where I've been too. And when you're in that moment when there's absolutely no light, the darkness actually has a presence to it. It has a weight. You can feel it in your body. But how much light does it take to break that darkness? Just a pinprick. You don't need a floodlight to push back that darkness, to change everything. That's just a pinprick of light changes that darkness. And so as we think about Jesus being the light of the world, or as the prophet Isaiah says in a passage we said a little bit of during our liturgy this evening, he says of the coming Messiah, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in the land of darkness, on them light has shined. For a child has been born to us. A son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. That's what the coming of Christ is about. It's about light overcoming darkness. And so it seems appropriate that the birth of Jesus is heralded not just by these angels, but by a star. Because while the light we get from the moon waxes and wanes depending upon what is going on there. The stars are always there, the same amount of light. And the darker the night sky gets, the brighter the stars are. That is the light overcoming darkness. Additionally, the star requires us not just to see it, but to do something about it. Because when the wise men arrived to talk with Herod, Herod's official title is King of the Jews, and so when they say, "Show us the King of the Jews," Herod's, "Well, you're looking at him." He said, "Well, no, not you. It's somebody else. Where would we find him?" And the chief priests and the scribes say exactly where they'll find him, but who is the only people who go to worship? These three foreigners. The chief priests and the scribes, Herod, all those who know what's taking place, who've heard this word from what they've said, stay behind. They're not changed by this experience. They keep going about their normal routines, their day-to-day activities. They believe that they're religious, but it turns out not so much, because they don't follow the star to go and see God. And so we see in this manifestation that the good news will be for all people. That's what the angels tell the shepherds, that the manifestation, that the good news will be for all people is shown to us by these foreigners, Gentiles, non-Jews who go and worship the Christ child. Because they follow the star. And the star leads them. But I'm going to go a step further and say that you don't have to be a celestial being in order to bring light into the world. The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson says, "The atoms of our bodies are traceable to the stars that manufactured them in their cores and exploded these enriched ingredients across our galaxy billions of years ago. For this reason, we are biologically connected to every other living thing in the world. We are chemically connected to all molecules on Earth, and we are atomically connected to all atoms in the universe. That means that everything is part of us, and we are part of them." He says, "We are not figuratively, but literally stardust." We don't live in the universe lives in us. We are all stars. So the question is, what are we going to do with that knowledge? Are we going to hide ourselves in our lights? Are we going to just pretend that we're ordinary and we can't do anything extraordinary? There's a scene in the movie Finding Neverland. Johnny Depp plays J.M. Barrie, the writer of Peter Pan. And he's in a park in London with Peter and his brothers, and he's trying to get them to believe, to enter into his world where his dog is a bear. So take a look. Jesus said he came to bring not just life, but life abundance. And we want to say, oh, it's just life. But God says, no, it's so much more than that. You are stars. Or as Casting Crowns sings, we are made for so much more than ordinary lives. We are made to thrive. Now, what are we told about Herod when the wise men arrive? That he's frightened. But what do the angels say whenever they announce the coming of Christ? Do not be afraid. Because fear lives and feeds off of darkness. But hope resides in light. Amen. And love resides in light. And joy resides in light. And peace resides in light. We are not called to sit back and let God do everything. We are called to participate in God's plans, to work to bring about the kingdom of God here and now. We are called to reflect the glory of God in our lives. Amen. To be light to the world. All of us. We are all stars. The light shines forth through us, but we have to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to follow that star and be overwhelmed with joy as the wise men are and bow down and worship? To be transformed and to be transformative? Or are we going to cower back in fear and strike out at anybody who threatens us? Because the truth is, if religion, if our faith is small and focuses only on us or our tribe, it's not of God. If it doesn't push us beyond ourselves to something bigger, to bigger ideas, to recognize that we are all connected, to see everyone as being a child of God, if it doesn't cause us to wonder and to be in a sense of awe, it is not of God. Jesus is the light of the world, and we are called to reflect that, to be agents of change and of hope. Now, I'm proud to say that we as a congregation are living that out, of knowing that we are stars and of reflecting God's lights to the world. In the past 3 years, we've given more than 1,000 teddy bears to the fire station right next door to us, and they give them in turn to children that they meet when they're out on calls. We've donated money to provide 7 schools in Kenya with water projects, so they now have clean running water. We donated hundreds of prayer blankets to people in need at Presbyterian Hospital, UNM Children's Hospital, and the Ronald McDonald House, so that people who are going through what might be the worst time of their lives know that they are not alone. And we are the first United Methodist Church in New Mexico to be openly and welcoming and affirming of all of God's children, regardless of who you love. We love you. And we do all that not so we can pat ourselves on the back. We do that because that's who we know we are called to be, because that's what Jesus said, is to be a disciple, is to pick up your cross and to follow, to let my light shine through you, that we will be known by the love that we show to the world. The Christmas story does not take place amongst the rich and the powerful, those who society says are important. It's a carpenter and a teenage mother from a backwater town in the backwater place of the Roman Empire. And it's shepherds living in their fields. And it's foreigners from a strange land. God doesn't need extraordinary people to do extraordinary things. He needs ordinary people to step up and say, here I am, let your light shine through me. Let me be a star for you, to believe that with God all things are possible. And so as we think of this star of wonder, it should cause us to want to follow and to wonder, where can I let my light shine? Where can I push back at the darkness of the world? Where can I be a difference? Because all of us, my brothers and sisters, are stars. We are all connected. The universe lives in us. So may our light shine brightly on this night and every night. I pray that it will be so. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.